Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's customer experience webinar, where we're going to look at some of the big issues in CXM today around our topic, Fragmented Journeys, Lost Loyalty, Fixing the Cracks in the Customer Journey. I'm Derek Swanson. I'm Vice President of Solution Architects Group here at Conduent, and I will be your moderator for today's session. So before we get started and introduce our speakers, we have just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So first, all attendees are in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. Second, you will see a question box at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to submit questions at any point during the discussion, as we have reserved time at the end for a dedicated Q&A. We'll answer your questions then. And lastly, today's session is being recorded. Okay. Very good. Now I'd like to introduce our two speakers for today's session. First, we have Mandy Huckaby, Vice President and General Manager of Customer Experience Management here at Conduent. And we're also joined today by Aishwarya Barjatya, Practice Director for CXM Services at Everest Group. So let's get kicked off with a brief introduction of our experts. And Mandy, let's start with you. Would you share a bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Derek. So Mandy Huckaby here with Conduent. I have spent the last 25 years really focusing on transforming customer experience through merging human empathy and technology advancements. So I spent time working on the client side in Fortune 50 companies that focused on banking, tech, insurance, retail, and e-commerce. And then in the past 8 or 10 years since then, I have been on the operations of the BPO side in the vendor space, driving CX innovation and really doubling down on implementing AI and digital strategies focused on customer satisfaction, retention, and overall operational efficiency. So glad to be here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mandy. And now, Aishwarya, I'll turn it over to you for a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Aishwarya. I'm a practice director with Everest Group. Been there for more than 6 years, tracking the CXM industry very closely, working with enterprises as well as service providers and the industry players to improve on customer experience, either through their suppliers or through their own fragmented journeys. So happy to be here. I spend a lot of time with both enterprises and providers, and I hope I can add some value today and share some examples to help you understand and improve on your own customer experience and customer journeys. Thanks.
Okay, super. All right, so now that we've met our experts, let's take a moment to walk through what we're going to be covering in today's session. All right, so we structured the conversation today around 3 key themes that are shaping the future of customer experience. So first, we're going to look at how organizations can keep pace with rapidly evolving customer expectations. Because as user behaviors shift and digital adoption accelerates, the expectations bar for seamless, personalized experiences continues to rise. So we're going to explore what that means in practical terms and how companies can stay ahead of the curve there. Secondly, we'll discuss why a unified CX strategy has become essential for delivering that expected modern experience. Many organizations still operate with fragmented channels, disconnected data, or siloed teams. So today we're going to talk about what it takes to bring those pieces together, creating a cohesive end-to-end journey for the customer that drives both customer loyalty and cost efficiency. And then thirdly, we'll dive into the different approaches that organizations can use to adopt and measure CX unification effectively. So that includes how to apply AI in a targeted, meaningful way, from enhancing self-service to supporting agents in real time to improving back office operations. All of those need to be built to deliver tangible, measurable outcomes. So that's what we'll be covering today. So to make today's session as interactive as possible, we will be launching a few quick polling questions throughout the webinar for you folks in chat. These are designed to get your perspective. This is just quick poll questions, help us tailor the discussion in real time. So please take a moment to respond when they do appear. And then finally, at the end, we'll wrap with a formal Q&A session. And as a reminder, you can submit questions at any point using the question box at the bottom of your screen. So we'll gather them up and address as many as we can at the end of the session. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our first topic, keeping pace with evolving customer expectations. Okay, so Mandy, let me start with you. So as we all know, organizations today are under tremendous pressure to keep pace with rapidly shifting customer needs, customer expectations, the modern UI experience, all of these things. There are a couple key challenges that can get in the way of delivering the kind of modern experience customers now demand. So Mandy, from your perspective, what do you see as the top challenges impacting CX performance and outcomes today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think challenging our optimal customer journeys are all of these items that you kind of see on the page. These are things that are not necessarily new and exciting, but there are things that continue to drive us from expanding out of these silos. We have a lot of pressure in our legacy systems, interacting and actually marrying different systems together so that they can learn more about your customers and start to identify and proactively outreach them. We have disconnected journeys throughout the process. We focus on quality of service. We see how we look at our culture, as well as the overall compliance and complexity that we have. And then, of course, AI, which is kind of the flavor right now of how we drive change, becomes a very, very big drive in how it's impacting CX performance. So when we look at each of these, we're going to highlight just a few of them today. And so we can always come back and do more. But the three we're going to highlight through our conversation is really the legacy systems, understanding how our organizations are relying on outdated platforms, homegrown platforms, potentially not omni-channel platforms that drive more archaic journeys for our customers and their cause effort and friction to our customers. We're also going to focus a little bit more on compliance complexity, looking at the regulatory requirements, how to expand in these industries and really focus on the geographies and managing more effectively. And then most excitingly, we're going to talk about AI and really telling a new story and how to make change for customers in their journeys that offers tremendous power and elevation of stories and allowing customers to get to solve their problems faster. So we really focus on all of these things married together to provide a good return on investment for each of our clients and our customers.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mandy, for that overview, what we're going to look at here. So now I want to dive a little deeper into perhaps the biggest challenge that you mentioned that is shaping CX transformation today, which is AI investment. So Aishwarya, let me turn to you here. So Aishwarya, what's interesting to me here is that while organizations are expressing record high intent to invest in AI, right? It's top of mind for everyone. Most, however, are struggling to move effectively beyond small pilots. Like they get the pilot going and it's great, they have a vendor, but to move that to scale into production, very difficult. So from your perspective, why are so many enterprises finding it difficult to move from AI pilots to full-scale production deployment?
Thanks, Derek, for that. Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading a few days ago, I think PayPal was almost 30 to 40% of its whole IT budget is actually dedicated to AI, which is huge. So we are actually seeing record high investment. There is a problem in turning that investment or the pilots into production, and we're seeing many different reasons for that. But what you see on the slide, this is actually a snapshot from a survey we did of 450 plus global enterprises in 2025, and we asked them, how are your AI pilots shaping up? Almost 77% said that less than 40% of their pilots have actually moved to production. That's a huge number. And we see many reasons for that, but some of the common ones are actually the difference between data reality and AI ambition. I think that's the biggest one, because when you started with pilots, it's in a clean sandbox kind of environment. You have certain, either synthetic data or just, some data points, but it's not really the whole picture. When you actually move to production at scale, you need data that's residing in your marketing clouds, in your legacy systems, in your CCaaS, CRMs, and at the back end in different places, and it's just not speaking to each other. So I think that's the biggest roadblock when it comes to implementation and scaling that. It's the same thing with teams as well. Marketing, sales, IT teams, customer service teams, they all speak different languages and they have different KPIs that they track, different metrics, different priorities that they have. They're not really on the same page as well. So that whole operating model or that design is not really suited for the organization to come together as a whole to be able to deliver on that customer experience. And I think lastly, it's also about governance and risk. I mean, from our experience, most enterprises, and we were speaking to a large bank just a few weeks ago, and they said that they are all ready to go into AI implementation. They have the budget, they have the talent as well. They're just not sure if they can take that kind of risk. So governance, having those kind of risk controls, guardrails in place, that's really important as well. And I think that's somewhere where especially the C-suite really doesn't want to go ahead if the full systems are not foolproof, right? And this is where most pilots are stalling in our experience.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Yeah, I mean, I've been in IT for 30 years, and I can tell you the risk mitigation is always a huge, huge factor, right? So when you put stuff into production, it has to work. You can't risk a pilot going into production and then failing because of lack of governance or lack of scalability, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, thank you. That was a great breakdown of the implementation challenges many organizations face when trying to scale their pilots into full production mode. And it just highlights how, we continue to have structural barriers and execution challenges, which can significantly slow momentum, even when the vision is clear. As you mentioned, some up to 30% of IT budgets are around AI implementation and deployment. So people know what they want to do, but it's difficult to execute. So it seems to my mind then, a major part of closing the gap between expectations and reality comes down to unifying fragmented customer data, turning it into insights that teams can really act on in a timely fashion. So now, Mandy, let me ask you, from your long experience working with large enterprises, how can you help, or how are you helping organizations make that shift a reality and not just hopeful theory that they want to invest and do, but they can't quite get there because of the limitations they believe they have?
Yeah, I think to kind of marry what you, Derek, have said, as well as Aishwarya, is sometimes it's baby steps. Sometimes you have to move slow in the beginning to set your foundation so that it can really flourish and grow. So, I mean, think about this as a garden that can endlessly, bear fruit and capabilities, in the extreme. And where I like to start and where I like to share a lot of insight with people is the actual life cycle engagement spectrum. So it's not just about humans anymore. It's not even just about AI and technology. Those things are awesome. When you put them together, they're even better. But really what you have to look at is, where does technology, AI, and human empathy cross at every emotional moment that a customer goes through in their entire life cycle? So how do you start putting forward different types of insights, like you said, Derek, that drive change? Sometimes it can be as simple as proactively offering communication for somebody to do something, to take action, to modify something, so that they never have to reach out to their logo or brand asking. You actually go out there first and you try to change the dynamic of the conversation. You start to create omni channels of adoption. So it's no longer I'm being forced to call, or I'm being forced to chat, or even go to social media, or I can't find who to talk to. You start engaging channels where customers want to live and talk with their brands on a regular basis. And it makes it super easy for them. And so as you go across the entire life cycle journey, from the very beginning to that early outreach, all the way to the closed loop operational engagement, like getting that feedback and building the model, growing the garden, so to speak, you start to link all of those disparate journeys that we talked about earlier. You start to reduce the friction, and you actually start to change what Aishwarya just spoke about and what you talked about in terms of insightfulness and not getting stuck, because you're not trying to boil the ocean. You're literally just trying to grow a few things in your garden. So that's kind of what I like to focus on in life cycle engagement.
Okay, that's a great approach. So kind of a crawl, walk, run, baby steps, right? And then continue to build on that and expand. So wonderful perspective then on how organizations can take a more practical, real approach into turning all of that touch point data you talked about into meaningful actions. So very nice. All right. Let's pause for a moment now and get to our first poll question. So to our audience in chat, we'd like to get your perspective here as well now. So the first question is, what most limits your ability to meet rising customer expectations with AI? So you should see a short poll question on the screen now. And let's take about 30 seconds to answer. And maybe
Yeah,
Mandy and Aishwarya.
Yeah,
give a
I'd love to
little-
jump in. As you're answering, I
Sure.
think just a couple of things. We talked about those fragmented journeys. I mean, imagine you're a customer and you have identity theft. And how many places do you have to call and manage your experience, in order to connect your story to the multiple people that you chat with, talk to, or text, right? So those are a little bit about those disconnected journeys coming together as one. And the same thing, the expense of where to start. It does not have to be this overwhelming mountain that you cover. It could be, hey, let's just connect and open up new ways. Let's reinvest the dollars that we're spending in different ways. So that's kind of the expense of convincing your leaders to do things differently.
Okay, got
Yeah.
a few more responses here. Any other thoughts on the questions, Aishwarya, that strike you?
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, honestly, team, to see change management and limited operational readiness actually get the maximum votes. We have actually seen this in practice as well. Even if you have all the data, the tech, the talent in place, change management, the change resistance to change that sometimes teams show, especially frontline teams, they're not trained or upskilled enough to use the tools. If they don't trust the recommendations that the AI assistant's giving them while they're on call with the customer, or if they don't trust the sentiment analytics coming through, nothing really, the AI really can't use itself. So, and you won't really get any value out of that. So if the workflow is not in designed and the human is not designed in a not trained in a way to actually use it, then there's really no point in implementing AI. So I think that's not surprising. And then the other thing about insufficient scaling capabilities, I think, is just an organization wide reset that sometimes needs to happen if an organization's using AI. Right data settings in place, right personalization settings in place, and of course the right kind of controls and security settings in place. So if that doesn't happen, what happens is every pilot project becomes more like a custom project, and the organization just gets too exhausted doing one after the other instead of having them all in a holistic manner.
Okay, so a little bit of an operational shift in mindset then, right, to move to this. It is a new paradigm. Mandy, your thoughts on this? The poll results here, we can close the poll. Change management, limited operational readiness kind of being the main thing. Does that track with what you're
Yeah,
saying?
I think Aishwarya said it beautifully. It can cause pilots to stall. It can cause people, regardless of the number of resources and talent you have on board. It absolutely tracks as what you said, Derek. I think what I would say, if you're feeling this, my advice is, if you're feeling this pain and of not being ready or not knowing where to start, there are very, very simple ways to just kind of get the ball rolling and start to see that cascade into larger ROI. It does not have to be this entire, like I said, boil the ocean. You can make one limited change with proactive outreach, or one limited change with converting phone calls to messaging and adopting in new ways. We're all very used to these things because we've started them in COVID. We started ordering from grocery stores and picking it up. We started using QRC codes to make orders and placements. So these are things that we just need to convince our leaders that it doesn't have to be overwhelming, costly, or timely, and it'll help you alleviate this friction and this pain point.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of growing pains with that, but I think overall the maturity has gotten to the point where, as you were saying, we can deploy this now with very, very low risk in a well-known fashion. Okay, so we'll close the poll. Thank you, chat, for that. And that's going to bring us to our next topic: why a unified CX strategy is the big need of the hour. So Aishwarya, let me turn to you here. As we shift into the how behind building a truly unified customer experience, I'd love to get your perspective on the foundational pillars that make this possible, and why is this kind of integrated AI-enabled approach becoming so critical and essential to enterprises right now?
Yeah, sure, Derek. So I'll probably just start with a quick definition of what a unified CX strategy is, and then I'll deep dive into the pillars, right? So a unified CX strategy is nothing but a very cohesive approach. It combines your customer external touch points such as chat, website, social media, etc., with your internal and internal data points and internal back end data, so that context follows the customer across different channels and not the other way around, the customer having to explain his or her context in every call and at every channel. And the different teams, marketing, sales, customer service, etc., they're all making decisions from that same single source of truth, in which all the customer interactions documented and the customer view is holistic. So that is something that's a unified CX strategy. For example, a customer is never going to call and say, hey, I want to speak to the owner of the CRM record because this is what's wrong in my data. No, they're just going to call and say, this has not been refunded, please do it right away. They just want the issue resolved. So that actually is what brings me to the first pillar. I would say experience enabler. End-to-end customer journey mapping is probably the single most important thing that you probably need to start with if you're implementing a unified CX strategy, because the full life cycle from customer awareness to customer support and then even renewal or upselling or cross-selling, what enterprises can start with is making the ideal workflow for customer journey, for the ideal customer journey, see where they're actually breaking down across different scenarios, and try and implement guardrails so that doesn't happen. For example, I was flying United recently, and the app experience was really so great. It was so smooth and seamless. It exactly knew when I was at my security check-in, when I was at the boarding gate. It told me that I can sit for 5-10 minutes. My zone is going to start boarding soon, etc. So, and my gate change, so it really kept me updated even before I asked for it, made me feel really comfortable. And that is what a connected journey is like, when the brand or the experience actually follows you and is able to and instead of you kind of reaching out, it tells you where you are so that you feel supported. The other one is adaptive personalization at scale. Now, this is very important. Personalization doesn't mean, hi, Aishwarya. That's just not personalization. It has to be married with intent as well as relevance. So probably start with not every touch point, but start personalization across certain touch points, either where the highest friction point happens, where the customer loses confidence, or at a point where the customer is feeling actually generous, and maybe you can do something about it. I was reading that McKinsey has actually reported that almost 70% customers need personalization, but they often get frustrated when they don't receive that level of personalization or that attention to detail. So making sure that you do that personalization, keeping trust and transparency in mind, because personalization doesn't need to be creepy, right? So that is probably the most important thing when it comes to adaptive personalization. Coming to the value enablers, which actually enable long-term value from AI implementation, omni-channel engagement orchestration. This is a no-brainer. Having the same brand voice, the same policy across different channels, across your website, your social media, your chat, your voice, your asynchronous messaging, everywhere. Having the same kind of brand voice will ensure that customers remain loyal, and your brand is perceived to be a brand that really cares about its customers. That will increase retention as well. And lastly, cross-functional CX governance. I think, again, having the right kind of defined rights across the different teams within an organization, marketing, sales, etc., that will enable the customer service or customer experience to really come together if they have the shared priorities and the shared KPIs that they're all tracking. Moving to the next slide, I would actually like to point something here. When an enterprise starts their journey to unified CX, there can be several barriers, as we discussed initially. What we are seeing is that service providers are actually playing a big role here, service providers such as yourselves, because what they are doing is they are helping in two ways. Of course, technology integration, data unification, that's probably the most important thing to have your organization ready for AI implementation. the way to do that is to unify systems across legacy systems, clouds, backend systems, marketing tech, CRMs and CCaaS systems, etc. Making sure that your customer data is all in one single view. Like I think I was reading the Prudential Life Insurance Company and actually built a whole 360-degree platform for each customer view, so that the different teams are all in sync and they actually have a unified view of the customer. So something like that really works well if you're working with a provider. And then human and operational transformation on the other hand, making sure the providers can actually help with providing an enterprise with the trained individuals, trained agents, making sure they're upskilled, offering the right kind of outcome based engagements as well that enterprises need. So enterprises only pay for the business outcomes that are achieved through the implementation. That's all really helpful and supporting and in supporting an organization that's starting out on its AI implementation, and as well as a unified CXM journey.
Okay, well, fantastic. That was great, Aishwarya. So this kind of really brings to life how CXM service providers can play a critical role in helping enterprises, move towards that unified CX strategy that you showed in the previous slide of those four elements that you really need to deliver to your customers today. The CXM service provider helps you deliver that, whether it's modernizing technology, connecting data, enabling people, training your people, enabling your people, or redesigning operation. So it is kind of a multi-dimensional shift that the CXM service provider can really help you accomplish. So Mandy, let me bring you back in. And if you could, walk us through an example of how all of these things come to life in a real production practice.
Yeah, so I think what you said was very well put in terms of creating these optimal opportunities. And I'm going to say it as many times as I possibly can, is this does not have to be scary. This does not have to be feel dangerous or high risk. I mean, today's costs really come from all the manual work we do. It's these high touch channels, it's broken journeys, it's even our understanding of where the customers are and, putting ourselves in their shoes. I mean, Aishwarya, I laughed at her example of nobody's going to call in and say, hey, how's your CRM connected with my tracking system? They're going to say, I need help with my problem, help me fix it. And sometimes we forget that. And this really, what we want to do is we want to understand and put ourselves and empathize with our customers. We also need to understand the business perspective, and we need to start moving our demand upstream. We take those costs from the manual work, the high touch, and we actually reinvest them in resolving problems through technology, in earlier interactions. So about 40 to 60% of our cost to serve allows us to, and that's directional through some proven case studies that we have developed here, but it really is the savings coming through in allowing us to resolve faster earlier on in the system. And so we really focus on three levers that you can trigger here. The first one is those low cost entry points. It literally, I have seen asynchronous messaging launch in 2 weeks at zero cost. It doesn't mean you have to put a bot. It doesn't mean you have to have authentication or verification or biometrics. All those things are really cool. And they can be eventually add-ons to your journey, but you can just start with opening up a new channel that is low cost and easy to use. And so that allows these different digital doors to guide your customers, to guide them to have conversations, to provide outbound communication, and really create a stronger relationship and adoption of that channel. If you move on to the next lever, this is all about resolution. So it's taking that channel and it's double downing in its capability. It's looking for self-service. It's looking for knowledge-based articles. It's looking for you to use multimedia to solve problems. So gone are the days of having to type something in and get a response. You can actually have videos or AR or augmented, realities show you how to do things and make things faster. You can even move into multimodal operations, but all of these things allow you to drive containment. It reduces repeats. It focuses on resolution, and honestly, it focuses on customer satisfaction. So these are all really cool things that you can do. And then the last lever that we pull is taking what we know and optimizing it. So finding the friction that still exists, and you find it very easily because your customers are the ones telling you where it's at. They're complaining about it. Your employees are telling you what they don't have empowerment to do, or policies that are driving friction. So if you start to optimize those journeys, you look at that channel shift mix, you look at the metrics mix, you look at how quickly you can resolve, and you look at satisfaction, both customer and employee, to drive real savings. So, and I think Aishwarya mentioned it earlier when we were looking at the poll results. It's not just about people. You have to have the talent, you have to have the experience. And what we like to do, and Derek is excellent at bringing these things. We bring these operational playbooks that we've had tried and true results from that say, hey, this is how you manage a different type of contact center. It may not be calls and may not be chats, but it could be asynchronous messaging. So you bring all of these insights to drive outcomes, to drive return on that investment, and to do it in a very knowledgeable and insightful way to make change that doesn't have to be scary.
Okay, no, this looks fantastic. This is definitely a holistic approach, right? You're targeting every aspect. And then at the end, I really love the part where, the drop-off analysis, the journey and friction heat maps, all of that helps you to like drive change back in upstream again, so you can continue to iterate on this process and improve it, improve your training, through QA, you can improve how your process works, how your people answer, et cetera. So it's 100%. A full continuous development cycle flywheel of improvement in your automation practices. So thanks.
Very
That's
well yes.
Perfect explanation, perfect example, Mandy. A great description about how you can take a more practical and real approach into turning data into meaningful action. So, and I know you're doing this all the time here. This is very real stuff. This isn't aspirational. It's stuff that we've been doing and continue to do on a daily basis. Okay, let's bring chat back in here and get your perspective on this. So we've got another poll up on the screen now. So where do you see the greatest improvement in utilizing AI in CX? Okay, so let's take a look at our poll questions here. Take a minute to answer these questions. And Mandy or Aishwarya, if you have any comments on them, feel free to make some observations.
While the results are coming in, I'd actually like to, hit off of what Mandy said in the previous slide. It was really interesting. Root cause detection analysis, drop-off analysis, because that's exactly what developing your customer journey mapping is about. It's about actually making sure that you develop it for enough scenarios. You make sure that you cover the cover the exceptions as well, and wherever the drop off is happening, wherever the customer is losing interest or confidence, and wherever there's the highest friction point, that's actually the point of making your customer journeys in a unified way. So I completely agree with that. And there's something we call retention impact, which is about the churn of the customers who actually went through a dispute versus those who didn't. So those who actually went through a dispute, checking how much they have actually been retained in your organization and not, that's actually going to give you an idea of whether, whether you actually have a good personalization or unified CXM strategy in place or not.
So you see how they go through a dispute and whether they stay with you or leave you is a good metric of how well you're doing, I guess, there. If the dispute is settled in a pleasant fashion and your customer is satisfied with the process along with the outcome, that's what you want, as opposed to they're already unhappy. If they go through this disjointed, painful journey, then they might just abandon, right, and not come back.
Exactly.
So we have seen in the past, people that abandon brands oftentimes never return to those brands because it's an emotional connection and they feel disconnected from that brand somehow. It is kind of odd, human nature. You feel a betrayal or you feel pain and you're like, I'm done with you guys, right? So
But
Brand.
Derek,
Yeah.
it's such a connection what both of you guys just said to this poll. I mean, look at the highest response rate. Now, I will say, I don't think there's actually a wrong answer in any one of these. You could have picked any one of these and had good standing. But what you guys both just said about your customers and what they are doing, and I mean, obviously, it's what people see, which I think is so fascinating, because if you actually go out there and listen to the news or the geopolitics of AI and where people are seeing the growth across the globe, AI can be often scary, and they sit there and say, oh, it's going to eat up this, it's going to take over this, it's going to do all these things. But it's fascinating that the biggest improvement that we see, and I don't disagree, is that it is brand perception. It is customer loyalty, because as you fix these high friction emotional connections that you just talked about, Derek, it really does start to change the perception of the brand, and that loyalty can continue on through generations. My kids, their kids, etc., will say, well, this is the only brand we've ever known to fly with or to bank with, or to have insurance with. So it's very interesting. But as I said, I don't think there's a wrong answer in this poll.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for your insights on that. I think, brand perception, that's interesting results, but strengthening brand perception and customer loyalty, because it's easier to keep a customer than to acquire a new one, right? Customer life cycle value, customer acquisition costs. I mean, all of these things are real metrics that still matter very much. Okay, let's close the poll then, and let's go on to our final topic for today: suitable approaches to adopt a unified CX strategy. All right. So, Mandy, the CX maturity path has changed dramatically over the years. What used to be measured through fairly simple channel-specific metrics has now expanded into a much more sophisticated journey-based and even predictive view of performance. So, as as organizations mature, the way they define and measure good CX has evolved along with their capabilities. So, from your perspective, tell us how the CX maturity path has evolved over time. How have the underlying metrics shifted as organizations move from basic transactional measurement to more advanced, unified, and outcome-driven measurement approaches?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting when you look at this slide is the crawl, walk, run, and then moving into the next gen. These have been around for decades, years in some cases. But what's interesting is there's been some sort of evolutionary change within our technology space that's driven each one of these moments. The invention of the internet, and the web allowed us to do live chat. The ability for social messaging and social media, and believe it or not, the pandemic allowed for us to go down the messaging and asynchronous route. And then obviously the power behind the continuous development of AI and robotic nature and the capabilities of these massive language models and databases have allowed us to move into next gen AI. The cool thing about this is it's not a forced process. You don't necessarily have to walk before you run. I won't say that it's not easier, but you can have opportunities to leapfrog to do different things. So I have absolutely seen people that had a 90% voice contact center mix with 10% chat, leapfrog into next gen AI as well as asynchronous. So that's the cool thing about these different channels, is it really allows you the power to change your entire ecosystem and how you engage with your customers. So it's always interesting to see where people live in their current space. Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes they feel that their customers may not be ready for a different change. Sometimes it's the old guard of leadership that says we're used to having a phone contact center where everybody's called. But think about the last time you called a phone contact center. Is it something you enjoyed? Did you look forward to making that conversation? Was it easy? Did it come at your time and you get a response that you needed in your daily calendar? I would probably venture to say there's probably not a bunch of people going, yeah, I really can't wait to make that phone call. You're probably messaging, you're seeing your children message, you're seeing, different businesses do those things. So I really believe that as you advance your capabilities, these are the areas of opportunity that you want to focus on. So I know that we'll have a poll, and I'm excited to see where everybody thinks they sit. But this is, again, very simple foundational elements that you can grow and have future, growth and iterations on as you learn and get more insights from your customer.
Okay. Thanks, Mandy. Great observations there. How CX maturity and measurement evolved over time. What you can do today. Anytime you talk about big change in an IT organization or a non-IT organization, but anytime you want to make a big change in your people, your process, or your technology, one of the most challenging things is to change the culture first, because people are used to doing things a certain way. And anytime you introduce change and something new, there's a level of hesitation, and there's risk, and there's, maybe some people are a little bit scared to do it or don't know exactly how to do it. This is where the CXM service providers can step in. And I know, Mandy, you do this all the time in your transformation exercises, helping people kind of change the culture to sometimes, as you say, just leapfrog into new areas of capabilities. So that's kind of our business, is to help people do that and enable them to do that, to overcome kind of the traditional cultural or technology barriers that they face.
That's actually interesting. I just want to say one thing, Derek. We actually at Everest Group call it PTSD. It's process debt, technical debt, skills debt, and data debt that organizations actually carry with themselves. And only if they kind of resolve that debt can they move forward in their AI journey.
We talk about technical debt a lot, but there's also like this people debt, it's culture debt, right? Exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I'll steal the PTSD thing. That's cute.
PTSD, yeah, it's nice. Yeah. Okay. Aishwarya, then let's take a look at this and examine this modern measurement paradigm a little further. There's a lot of discussion right now about whether AI is making traditional CX metrics obsolete, or in reality, is AI replacing those metrics? Or is it redefining what good performance actually looks like in a more meaningful way? So we're seeing a shift towards more predictive, real-time, and experience-centric KPIs that capture value in ways legacy metrics really simply couldn't. So my question to you is this: from your vantage point, how is AI reshaping the KPI landscape? What major transitions are you seeing as organizations adopt more modern AI-enabled CXM metrics? Let's talk about that.
Yes, Derek. And you hit the nail on the head, right? When you said it's actually moving from very traditional metrics to more experience centric. So we call them XLAs at Everest Group. So we are moving from SLAs to actually XLAs. And what we're seeing is that, yes, AI has not eliminated the classic AHT, FCR, CSAT, etc., NPS, but it has changed what they mean and when and how they are used. So, for example, if a customer calls trying to raise a fraud dispute, and they get stuck with chat, or they're not able to really get their issue resolved through two or three different contacts or repeat contacts, the containment rate will show that the case got logged. The voice call will show that they put the phone down in 30 seconds. All of those, probably, and even the CSAT survey, when it comes in, the customer might just not be interested, and they might even just press a 5 on 5. So even those metrics might land. But if you actually see the customers anxious, they have lost trust because they've not been able to get their issue resolved and get their fraud dispute resolved. So there's actually different kind of metrics that are coming into the market and what we're hearing about. So from isolated metrics such as CSAT, NPS, etc., we're actually moving to more integrated metrics, which is about combining different metrics. So in this case, it would be not just about AHT or containment rate, but it would actually be about being able to ensure that the dispute actually got resolved. So the journey completion rate, the repeat contact rate should be down. So the customer shouldn't be calling every day or every second day to get their dispute resolved. The cost to serve as well. So the cost to serve the customer across the different touch points has gone through the roof because of the different calls that the customer has made. So even if your traditional metrics are making sense, your actual experience metrics aren't. So that's what the implementation of AI is actually leading to. It's leading to more integrated metrics, making sure the metrics actually reflect the true reality of the customer experience. Similarly, with lagging indicators, such as we are actually moving to now more leading indicators, which can predict customer churn, sentiment, intent signals, trust signals that they are sending through the interaction. From agent performance to agent enablement, that means not just simply tracking how the agent is performing, but also being able to make sure that the agent is collaborating with AI. So the AI collaboration index, the human AI collaboration index, you see that on the right side, or the handoff success rate. We're seeing some of these new KPIs now come into the picture, because it's not that chat can handle everything. It's not that humans are handling everything. It's about how well they're working together to achieve the desired level of CX. And finally, channel metrics, moving from to an integrated journey metrics. I think we've kind of talked about that, making sure the customer, the context follows the customer, and there is continuity throughout the journey. Yeah. So I think
So it looks like we're still keeping your traditional metrics, right? So we're not getting rid of those, but what you're adding is a much more nuanced, in-depth, real-time, proactive or predictive analysis of what is the customer experiencing, and that's
yes,
in line right now, as opposed to kind of post-facto analysis of what we think maybe
exactly,
happened back during their journey, right? So
exactly.
much more real-time, nuanced, contextual understanding of the customer experience is what we're adding with AI. These experience centrics, as you call them, your XLA.
Excellent. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's an
because the customer
experience
actually doesn't
KPI.
care. Yeah, sorry. I was just saying that the customer doesn't care if your chat SLA is 30 seconds, but if your journey, the whole dispute resolution is taking 5 days, it really doesn't matter, right? So we are actually now going to that, as you said, that level of nuance, that level of understanding, to ensure that the customer at the other end is feeling, served well. Because AHT is not just about delivering the fastest bad experience, it's actually about delivering good experience. And sometimes I think we forget that in the industry.
That's a
So,
great point. Yeah, we don't want the fastest bad experience, right? Okay. So
yes.
excellent breakdown, Aishwarya. Thank you, of how AI kind of reshaping and adding on to the way we think about performance, pushing organizations toward more modern, predictive, and experience-centric KPIs. Okay. Let's go back to chat now, our audience, and have our final poll question and see where chat is on their maturity journey. So the question is, how far along are you on the CX maturity path? Voice, web, and live chat, or do you have some, social messaging, async, more omni-channel stuff? And of course, have you deployed that? And then the last one, have you deployed generative or agentic AI into your systems? All right, interesting. Mandy,
Yeah, I
your
mean, I
reaction
see
to what you
this.
see here?
Yeah, I see this and it actually excites me because there's just so much opportunity, right? So there's just so many ways that you can change the scope of your business. Imagine if I was to leapfrog you, if y'all are sitting in the voice and even some live chat. If you're sitting there, you're doing a concurrency of one-to-one, one phone call for one agent at a time. When you get into the asynchronous social messaging, you're doing closer to one agent handling 5 contacts at once. So imagine the savings of your not only of your operational efficiency, but customers, they don't always care, especially in the messaging world. Imagine, I use this example often. Imagine that you're asking your family what's for dinner tonight. You don't need them to keep you engaged and ask you a million questions about dinner. You just want them to answer, hey, we're having Mexicans on the menu tonight. You just need them to answer when they answer in a way that resolves your question. So if you go from one-to-one concurrency in voice to 4-to-1 concurrency in asynchronous messaging, and then when you get into the agentic world, it is almost limitless in terms of what the systems are capable of doing as long as you have it built. So I see this and it makes me think, oh my goodness, you guys have so much opportunity to drive change for your customers and for your businesses. So it's actually, while it's probably not ideal for you, it's exciting that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to go after.
Yeah, big opportunities there for really highly disruptive change in a positive way, right? Truly order of magnitude improvements in what you're doing. Okay, great. So let's go ahead. Let's close the poll and let's review a little bit here. So today we've talked about the challenges around modern CXM, the need for unification, the approaches to getting started towards modernization. So now let's shift as we finish up here. Let's shift into the art of the possible. So what can we do today? What can be done today? So Mandy, you've worked closely with enterprises that are transforming their CX operations end to end. Could you share maybe a real world example that you have that illustrates what is possible when organizations embrace this kind of unified AI enabled approach that we've been talking about, how it changes the experience, the efficiency gains, customer and stakeholder value that get created through this modernization journey?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked so much about it and you guys, based on that poll, you're living in this world today. You're living in the standard experience of forcing a phone call, maybe even a chat, trying to hold on to that person so that they don't abandon the conversation. And what you're actually providing them is a ton of friction, it's stress, it's effort that you're driving your customer experience. And that's kind of where we're living today. That's the experience that the majority of people actually feel on a day-to-day basis. And based on the poll that we just answered, it's what you're living today. So the focus should really be on where we want to go in the next slide. So it's more about the experience opportunities of opening up omni-channel capabilities, proactively going after saying, hey, instead of you reaching out to me when you need help, I know so much about you that I can reach out to you to set you up for success before you ever need to contact me, saving an entire contact, driving loyalty, driving customer experience. But when and if you actually do need to contact me, I can make it seamless. I can authenticate you. I can drive self-service. I can drive containment. I can give you knowledge that you never have to speak to a human. But when you do, I can also create a very seamless customer journey with an agent that you have empathy, you have results, you have focus on solving your complex problems. So really driving those capabilities within the conversation so that you can eventually get to that stuff we talked about before. How do you close loop with insightful data to continuously build out that experience, that journey for your customer base to drive change? And every time they reach out, every time they complain, every time they say something, every time your agent says something, just think of it, this is a nugget of value to grow and optimize in your journey. And then looking at that and saying, how do I adopt this person that they are loyal to my brand and they keep coming back whenever they need help because we're here and we're doing it in an optimal way. So that's really what should be focused on as we build out these next gen customer experiences.
Okay, thanks, Mandy. That was a fantastic example there to show what's truly possible today when organizations embrace this kind of unified AI-enabled approach to CX. Really brings a transformation to life here in a concrete way. Okay, now we're going to shift chat to our Q&A session. We've had a couple of questions come in through the webinar. We'll take the next few minutes to address as many as we can. If you haven't submitted yours yet, feel free to type it into the question box now and the mods will send them to me. All right, so let's see here. Let me check. Okay, first question. If we're only using, Mandy, let me ask you this one. If we're only using basic chat or voice today, what's the very first step we should take to start moving up the maturity path? So what's the first thing you recommend?
The first thing I recommend is really focusing on creating a different channel that optimizes. So messaging would be the option that I would go with. And it doesn't mean you have to do APIs. It doesn't mean you have to have bots. All you really have to do to create a messaging channel is register with a messaging provider, which is often free. And then you have to set up a queue that allows that volume to happen via chat or via messaging. So it's very simple. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to change a policy. You don't have to change a process. You don't have to add technology or bots or APIs. It literally could just be a new channel. It's a very simple, takes about 2 weeks to 30 days max to do these. That's what I would do. The one complexity that I would guide you is you do need a different style of agent. Voice agents are very different than digital agents. So voice agents focus on comprehension, language skills, ability to have empathy while talking. In the digital space, the asynchronous space where I would focus, you need somebody that has the ability to type, answer questions, resolve, and style shift based upon what that sentiment is of the person trying to talk to your logo is doing.
Okay, so async messaging sounds pretty simple.
It
Good.
can be.
Mandy, I know you make it simple. Next question around AI here. So Aishwarya, let me ask you this. With so many potential AI use cases, and we hear this all the time, AI can do anything. AI is eating the world. AI can do anything you can imagine, right? Except, it really can't. So how do we avoid getting overwhelmed and figure out which one to tackle first with so many potential AI uses out there?
Sure. And you said it right when you said people sometimes treat AI as this magical wand that will fix everything, but it's not really AI so much. And in Mandy's example, we saw that it is AI, but it's enabled by connected data, connected systems, human escalation, human in the loop, as well as, of course, that kind of process that's in place, right? So it is definitely a combination of those things. But yes, if you're starting on your AI implementation journey and you want to pick some of your use cases, I would probably start with the top 5 journeys, customer journeys, either by strategic importance or by volume. I would probably start there. The second thing you would look at is feasibility. So making sure that you have the right data in place or the right systems in place, because you can't fix everything or all the use cases at once. Probably start with the one that you have the most data for and most kind of holistic view of. Then obviously the other aspect is risk, making sure it's a low the kind of risk that you can tolerate. It's a lower risk, higher volume use case that you can probably use, such as maybe FAQs or status updates or notifications or any simple transactions that you want to make the customer aware of. If you're already done these simpler ones, then I would probably move on to more complex ones, such as maybe making sure your policy, having like a policy agent, so making sure your policy is compliant with the regulations, etc. So kind of moving on to those more complex ones. And then I think the last one should be measurability, because if you're starting a pilot, you obviously need to make sure that you can measure it through the AI KPIs that we talked about, making sure the success looks the same for everyone, making sure that everyone's on the same page about how the end outcome should look. I think these are the important criteria to look at.
Okay, so very good. So on this, kind of a follow-up, couple of questions came in, and I'm going to combine these basically, which says, how do we evaluate which use cases will deliver actual high value then versus the ones that just sound exciting? So it's do you have an evaluation or a free evaluation you provide to understand the current state and provide the path for the future? So this is, I know we do this in our transformation services and whatnot. People want to know, like, how do I figure out which of these things are going to provide real value to me, the painkillers that are actually going to solve problems, and not just the ones that look cool or that are fun or interesting, or that just give me like incremental value, but don't really move the needle effectively on the cost to value ratio, right? What are the ones that are disruptive? How do I figure that out? How do I evaluate which use cases? So I'll open that up to maybe Mandy, you can talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, in the interest of time, I think, even in the next slide, we're absolutely open to conversations. I think it's one of our highlights of our our job, Derek, is to talk with people and see where you land and what we can do to help support you. And so, yeah, some of that is absolutely things that we're just brainstorming with you. It's free. We love to learn. We love to help. We love to drive change. And then we work a way that allows you to see value in your ecosystem. So the value itself, I think, to answer your question, Derek, is it's really dependent upon where you are and what you're willing to do. Because sometimes if you see high risk and you need biometrics, then biometrics may not be a flashy thing. It may need a required need, in order to utilize. But in other businesses, it may just be, hey, I want to do more with less people, and we're looking for concurrency. So I would say it's very dependent upon what business you are, what intent you're trying to solve, and who your customers are and what they're trying to do. So, but we're always open for the conversations. You're seeing our pictures up there, so feel free to link in with us. But yeah, we're ready and willing to start brainstorming with you on different ideas of how to change the operating model.
Okay. Fantastic. That's our last question. So in closing, I want to thank you both very much for your participation to chat and whatnot.
Thank you.
And as now we come to the close of today's session, I want to extend a sincere thank you to both of our experts, Mandy Huckaby and Aishwarya Barjatya, for sharing your thoughtful insights, timely new research, and practical guidance for our participants. So both of you brought a real clarity to a very complex and very fast moving space. I truly appreciate the depth of expertise that you both brought to the discussion. A big thank you, of course, to everyone in chat. Your engagement, poll responses, questions made this a dynamic session. So thank you very much. And again, as Mandy said, if you'd like to connect with us, have further discussions, we have our QR codes up to connect on LinkedIn. You can send us a note there. We will respond online. And to finish up, we hope we're leaving you with some new ideas, a clearer sense of what's possible today, and some inspiration maybe to take the next steps in your CX transformation journey. So from all of us here, thanks so much for now, and bye-bye.